Hello and welcome on board the Newstrack. The India Today Election Intelligence Dashboard is all set and running, and over the next 1 hour, we will take you through all the factors that are at stake in the first phase of polling that kickstarts early in the morning, the 27th of March. What happened in previous elections, what happened in the Lok Sabha elections, and what could happen this time round. All that and more coming up on this special edition of the Newstrack.
After weeks of a bruising campaign, after 2021's most vicious crossfire, after gods, mantras and temple hops, after crowds, chaos and violence, will it be Khela Hobe or Khela Shesh? State of War Bengal finally begins.
In the first phase of polling, all attention will be on the big battle in West Bengal. I want to take you through the areas of Medinipur and Jungle Mahal where the elections will happen. So these are largely the southern part of West Bengal. In the 2016 assembly elections, the Trinamool Congress won 27 of the 30 seats that will be up for grabs. The left alliance had just 3. The BJP didn't even open its account. That changed a lot in the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, where the BJP made a very strong foray. Now, the Trinamool Congress will be hoping to win back as many of those 27 seats that they had in the last assembly elections, whereas the BJP will hope for an encore of what happened in the Lok Sabha elections. Just ahead of the big polling day, the battle in Bengal continued to get downright ugly. Lots of barbs exchanged on the battlefield. Here is our lead story.
Fiery Bengal battle is now intensely personal. Hours before first phase of polling, abuse politics fly thick and fast in the poll-bound state. The poll rhetoric hit a new low after Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee, in a thinly veiled attack, hurled Khooni ka Raja barb at Prime Minister Modi. Without taking Prime Minister's name, Mamata called him a zamindar of dacoits. Mamata's hot-headed remark after BJP accused TMC of looting and branding them thieves.
আমি চোর, আমি ডাকাত, আমি খুনি, আমি মানুষকে জীবন দিয়ে ভালোবাসি, আর তুমি শালা খুনিদের রাজা, খুনিদের জমিদার, ডাকাতদের জমিদার, সব টাকা খেয়ে নিয়েছো। পিএম কেয়ারের নামে টাকা তুললে, কোথায় গেল টাকা? কেউ পায়নি।
Soon after her remarks, BJP trained guns at Didi, accusing Mamata of lowering Bengal's political discourse.
बहुत ही शर्मिंदगी की बात है, और जो बात वो बोल रही है उनका क्या बेसिस है? संतरास और खून के राजनीति तो टीएमसी सरकार ने चालू किए हैं। ये 10 साल में हमारा 140 कार्यकर्ता को मार दिया गया है। जुडिशियल कस्टडी में, पुलिस कस्टडी में, ऐसे भी मार दिया गया, पैर से झुला दिया गया और बोला है सुसाइड।
Prime Minister Modi had accused Mamata of stealing Amphan flood relief funds from poor. High on drama and with stakes sky high, Bengal poll campaigning has already witnessed obscene language, unparliamentary remarks and vicious personal attacks. With inputs from Indrajit Kundu in Kolkata, Bureau Report, India Today.
West Bengal typically registers very high voting percentage numbers. In the last 3 assembly elections on these 30 seats, the number of voters who've come out has ranged between 84% and 86%. So very, very high voting percentages. What's at stake in the first phase? We'll speak a bit about Bengal and then we'll move to Assam. I want to introduce you to our panelists joining us on this broadcast. Defending their turf will be the Trinamool Congress, that's represented on this broadcast by Riju Datta. Their alliance partner, the Congress, represented by Supriya Srinith. It's the BJP that's hoping to make this the biggest victory since 2019. Nupur Sharma joins us from the Bharatiya Janata Party. Rajat Sethi has worked on election campaigns, understands what's at stake, will give us a political perspective. And Nilanjan Sarkar is one of our finest young political analysts and theorists. He's in fact done his PhD in West Bengal politics and understands the ins and outs of what's happening in Bengal at this time. He's joining us as well. I want to go across first to Riju Datta because it is Mamata Banerjee with her broken leg out in a wheelchair who's fighting the battle of her life. The BJP is fighting hard, but they've had many big victories since 2014. If Mamata Banerjee were to lose in West Bengal, you know, it has a huge national political ramification as well. How confident are you at this moment that when the final vote has been counted come the 2nd of May, the Trinamool Congress and Mamata Banerjee will be the last opposition party and the last woman standing?
Rahul, first of all, very good evening to you and good evening to the panel. I just want to start on a lighter note by saying, you know, when I was a child, I was very fond of this comic called Asterix and Obelix. And you know, the narrative of that comic was, there was a small Gaulish village which was indomitable by the great Romans who conquered the world. And I find a very eerie similarity to that, to what is happening in Bengal elections. One lady in a wheelchair standing in front of the entire armada of BJP, with the PM, a Home Minister, and everything they have, CBI, ED, IT, against one 66-year-old lady with a broken foot on a wheelchair, standing against them all, fighting for the democracy and the constitution of this country.
Sure, but there's only a certain amount of pushback that one woman in a wheelchair can do. Because on the other side, you've got the largest, most potent election machine that modern India has seen. Nupur Sharma, at this level, what's the confidence index inside the BJP? This is what Amit Shah calls the biggest political battle for the BJP. This is ultimately where the right-wing political roots of the BJP are traced back to, and you've never won Bengal. How confident are you that this time round you'll be able to do better than what happened in the Lok Sabha elections?
Well, good evening, Rahul. The picture also shows and depicts not only the lady in the wheelchair, but perhaps what happened right before that. The blame game of actually completely blaming the electorate of Nandigram, calling those people outsiders, from saying that it was chaotic, it was an attack, to saying, oh no, it was perhaps a mishap, from putting your leg, which was okay, over and above the leg which was injured. Everybody's seen that video. From being cast in a plaster one day to coming into a gauge the next day. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. And if you think that this is going to befool the public of Bengal, who you very unceremoniously have been calling outsiders, and you, Riju, yourself attempted to call the people who attended the rally on a different date with me as B grade, not brigade, B grade rally, then the people of West Bengal are smart enough to know what is happening. From unleashing terror and violence, from arresting people for saying Jai Siya Ram, what have you not done, from not giving them any taste of any kind of development over your two governments? And I'll tell you something, Rahul. We were mocked for keeping an objective of 22 seats in 2019 election. You know it very well. We all saw it before the Lok Sabha election. I agree we were from 3% to 10.3% vote share in 2016 assembly election. Who would have thought that we would reach 41% vote share and get 18 seats as well? That's what I'm saying. You're right when you say BJP has never tasted success in assembly elections in West Bengal.
No.
But if the panchayat elections were anything to go by, the kind of violence which was and terror which was unleashed by the TMC was anything to go by, and how it was repeated during the Lok Sabha election, and yet BJP came out victorious, I would say this election is, of course, a hard-fought battle.
Okay,
and maybe
so Nilanjan Sarkar, if you look at assembly elections typically, they've tended to be different from the Lok Sabha elections, with the BJP's vote percentage tipping up to 10%, sometimes even more, in comparison with what happened in the Lok Sabha elections. Bengal, though, could be different because it's the Trinamool that's in power. They have 2 terms of anti-incumbency, all manner of charges and nepotism being levelled against this government. You've been travelling through the state. What's your, as non-partisan as possible, reading of the current state of play?
So look, I mean, I think first, just with the question that you asked, I don't think, and I've been writing a lot about the distinction between national and state elections, I don't think that framework applies for West Bengal. I don't think that anybody is expecting 10 percentage point drops for the BJP. The reason is, the TMC is facing a fair amount of anti-incumbency. The BJP is the primary alternative for somebody who wants to vote against the TMC. And so the same kind of dynamics where you have state level leaders and national level leaders within the BJP that have been doing this for a while, and competitors at the state level and the national level that have been doing this for a while, that doesn't exist here, right? The BJP is an emergent party, and it is the alternative to the TMC, right? So that's the first thing that I would say. Now look, there are 2 basic facts that we can say about what's happening in West Bengal. There's a large degree of Hindu-Muslim polarization, empirically, and there is a fair amount of anger at the TMC's local cadre, right? Mamata remains extremely popular, but her local cadre, there's a lot of anger against it, so there's a fair amount of anti-incumbency. And empirically, there's also no secret here, or no mystery as to what is likely to happen. According to CSDS, 57% of the Hindu community voted for the BJP in 2019. Now, if that number goes up to around 65%, the BJP is going to sweep. If that number drops below 55%, the BJP is going to get swept, right? Now, everything is this devil in the details. How much of it is about mobilization for the TMC, the strength of the campaign, the strength of the candidates, but we're all essentially playing with these very small percentages, right? In all cases, there will still be a fair amount of Hindu and Muslim polarization. The question is it enough to get the BJP over the mark? Or is it going to drop just a slight bit from 2019? Was 2019 the most polarized it can get? In which case, the TMC is going to sweep.
Okay, so the Trinamool, as one analyst put it, needs to win a majority of the minority and a minority of the majority vote, which essentially means, Rajat Sethi, that the task is that much tougher for the Bharatiya Janata Party, because the Congress and the Trinamool start with 30, you start with 0 for the BJP, and now can the BJP polarize the Hindu community more than they were polarized in the assembly election in favor of the BJP? I think that is ultimately what will determine what happens in Bengal, and the extent to which the left, the Congress and the Furfura Sharif, the Indian Secular Front, can cut into the Muslim vote of the Congress Trinamool. Those are the 2 factors you think which will be key in determining what happens the 2nd of May?
That's a fantastic question, Rahul. Both Assam and West Bengal have a very similar demography. In Bengal, you have the so-called second majority. The Muslim section constitutes around 30%, whereas in Assam, it constitutes around 40% of electorate. So you can very well say that Congress in Assam is going to start off with 40%, and TMC is going to start off at 30% vote share. I don't see that it is as simple as it sounds. How are these votes of the minorities spread out in the individual constituencies also matters. For instance, in Assam, most of these minority votes are limited in a few set of constituencies. So in certain constituencies, their vote share is as high as 95%. Therefore, just going by the overall number will not give you the exact picture. Ultimately, you have to win the number of seats in order to be able to form the government. And this is where I believe that yes, TMC has a say on the majority number of votes in the minority population, but BJP would really hope that some of it gets divided between the Third Front and TMC. There is another charge that BJP might not be able to polarize or not polarize. I think this election, BJP has stuck to the developmental narrative. It is the TMC which by far is just playing on this women card over and over again. They basically want to make it a fight between, say, the Prime Minister and the alpha male on one side, and bring a woman who is on the wheelchair on the other side. And that's the basic rhetoric that they are harping upon, because they have very less to show when it comes to developmental and those aspects. And this is where BJP wants to bring back the debates, bring back the conversation on, and this is why Prime Minister said that it is not Khela Hobe, it is Vikas Hobe. They really want that debate happen on these questions.
Okay, Supriya, the Congress doesn't seem to be, for its part, taking the West Bengal election very seriously. Your top leaders have been campaigning in Kerala, they've been campaigning in Assam. It's almost as if you've already concluded that you're going to do very badly, and therefore leaders don't really want to do the rounds in West Bengal, because if the party does badly, it'll then reflect on their scorecard. What's at stake for the Congress in Bengal?
So by the same logic, I can turn. Around and ask that Mr. Modi hasn't been campaigning in Tamil Nadu and Kerala. Has he given up the fight? I mean, our seats, the seats allocated in our coalition are towards the last 3 phases, and you will see people go there. What is the point of going when the first 6 phases are going to go into elections? Bengal, remember, is a 9-phase election, no less. However, I would want to make a comment on something that the TMC said, then of course said by the BJP spokesperson here. We are ready to celebrate the 75th year of our independence. And at a time like this, in Indian electoral politics, we are still talking about physical violence. We are still talking about bloodshed. I think it should be a shame on this kind of discourse. I don't know what sort of development politics is being referred to, because the same people who are assuring everybody, every householder a government job in Bengal have a very, very blotchy track record as far as job creation in the rest of the country and at a national level in 7 years of governance is concerned. I also want to raise a very important point as far as Bengal is concerned. I'm presuming we will talk Assam next. About a few days back, I had done a press conference and I had raised some very serious questions against the top leadership of the BJP in Bengal. Mr. Dilip Ghosh, the president, and of course Mr. Kailash Vijayvargiya, the general secretary in charge. Now there are audio clips in public domain that talk about money for tickets, that talk about sexual favors for tickets. I wonder if these are issues that the BJP is going to conspicuously keep silent on, or will they talk on these issues? And I wish Bengal politics was about development. I wish it was about jobs. I wish it was about education. I wish it was about health. You know what is it about? Who is a bigger Lord? Is Lord Ram a bigger, God, or is Devi Durga a bigger goddess? That's what the TMC and BJP have reduced this discourse to. Quite frankly, you'll be surprised with the results. I also believe polarization of this kind has not happened in any election, and the BJP's blatant attempts to polarize, I think, are very out in the open, and I don't need to comment on that so much.
Okay, so in the midst of all of this, the Prime Minister is in Bangladesh. He'll be going to the temple of the Matua community, and remember, the Matuas, largely refugees from West Bengal, are a very key part in this Bengal elections. And just when polling will be happening, the Prime Minister will be doing his rounds, planned of course much in advance, but doing his rounds in Bangladesh, and that temple trip will be looked at very, very carefully in West Bengal, because while the Matuas voted for the BJP in large numbers in 2019, they've been anxious about the fact that the BJP hasn't pushed ahead with the Citizenship Amendment Act, which is what they hope will give them a certificate of citizenship as Indian nationals. And while the BJP has been making these promises, but since there hasn't been any action, the community has been anxious. The Prime Minister, through all these visits and from what JP Nadda and Amit Shah have done in the past, are hoping that they'll be able to ensure that the Matua community remains strongly wedded to the BJP's cause. Here's the report.
After Prime Minister's tribute to Bangladesh war heroes, the stage is set for the second and unmissable highlight of his 2-day Bangladesh visit. The much-awaited temple visit to Matua community-dominated Orakandi. This is Hori Temple, the birthplace of Horichand Thakur, who formed the Matua sect, an influential group among Bengal's scheduled caste community.
That's the Thakurbari temple representing the Matua community. Harish Chand Thakur was the man who founded the temple, and today the Matua community in West Bengal is highly influenced by this temple. This is the sect that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be wooing here in Thakurbari in Gopalganj.
এই ভিজিটটা ভারতের প্রধানমন্ত্রীর অত্যন্ত ইম্পর্টেন্ট বা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ আমি মনে করি এবং এটা আমাদের মতুয়াদের জন্য একটি সম্মানের বা গর্বেরও বিষয়। উনি আসছেন, এতে আমরা অত্যন্ত আনন্দিত এবং আমরা উচ্ছ্বাসিত। উনি ওড়াকান্দি ঠাকুরবাড়িতে এসে পূজা দেবেন।
The Matua community is excited by Prime Minister's visit and want Indian citizenship for those from their group who are settled in India.
যে এই যে প্রথম মানে বাইরের কোনো রাষ্ট্রপ্রধান আমাদের বাংলাদেশে আসতেছে এবং তিনি আমাদের হরিচাঁদ মন্দিরে পূজা করবেন, এটা আমাদের কাছে অত্যন্ত আনন্দের এবং গর্বের।
হ্যাঁ, আমরা খুব খুশি ভারতের প্রধানমন্ত্রী আসছে এখানে, আমরা এতে খুব আনন্দিত।
এত অজপাড়াগা অর্থাৎ আমাদের মতুয়াদের মূল ধাম সে ওড়াকান্দিতে আসবেন, এতে আমরা অনেক আনন্দিত।
Classified as a scheduled caste, Matuas are Namoshudros or lower caste Hindu refugees who have migrated to West Bengal from Bangladesh over many decades since partition. The Matuas constitute 17.4% of the total scheduled caste population in Bengal. That amounts to around 1.8 crore people spread across North 24 and South 24 Parganas, Noida, Jalpaiguri, Kuch Bihar and several districts. In North 24 Parganas, there are over 33 assembly constituencies, out of which the Trinamool Congress won 27 in 2016. But the TMC lost 12 of these assembly segments to the BJP in 2019 Lok Sabha polls, primarily because Matuas backed the Saffron Party. In the 2019 Lok Sabha elections, the BJP won 4 of the 10 seats reserved for the scheduled caste. It had offered the Matua migrants citizenship under the Citizenship Amendment Act. From Prime Minister Modi touching Matua matriarch's feet during 2019 Lok Sabha polls, to Home Minister Amit Shah having lunch with Matua community leaders during his visit last year, the BJP is leaving no stone unturned to consolidate its votes among the community in this big Bengal battle.
The stage is set here in Thakurbari. If you see behind me, preparations underway to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. That's the stage that he'll come to address the Matua community. If you look at the chairs, it is quite interesting. They have kept the COVID restrictions in mind and ensured that there is no way that there is any criticism coming the Indian administration or Indian mission's way when it comes to how this event was managed and handled. But it is going to be significant because it's 27th March when Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be over here addressing the Matua community. With video journalist Pavan Kumar in Thakurbari, Geeta Mohan for India Today.
So you've got this big outreach to the Matua community, Nilanjan Sarkar. How big a factor will the Matua voters be? And it's very, you can keep criticizing the fact that, polling is going on, but this is an international trip and it's planned in a way that this narrative will play itself out on WhatsApp, on video, on television, local channels, national channels, and will be seen widely, not just in the Matua community, but also across the state.
That's right. I mean, look, the BJP is the party at the center. It does have certain tools at its disposal at the state level that it can deploy to continue to try to win the elections in a way that the TMC doesn't have, and I think that's the most euphemistic way you can put it. But more to the point, the question about how important is the Matua community, what impact will this have? See, here's how I generally think about this, right? So the BJP has done sort of an interesting strategy if you compare it to, let's say, what the BJP has done in UP. We normally think about Mayawati as and BSP as the party that is trying to sort of cobble together different groups, But in West Bengal, it's the BJP. I give this to the Rajbongshis, I give this to the Kurmis, I give this to the Matuas. Now, what's the logic? See, the thing is that given the kinds of numbers we've talked the BJP needs to reach, they're going to have to sweep their strong communities, right? They're going to have to win a very, very high percentage of the Matua votes, Rajbongshi votes, so on and so forth. And so the reason to really reach out and push hard is to really get those percentages up. It's certain that the BJP is going to win the Matua community, but Is it going to win 80% of the Matuas, 70% of the Matuas, 90% of the Matuas? That's going to have a huge impact on the 29 to 30 seats the Matuas actually have a lot of influence in.
Supriya, do you think it's a little unfair from the opposition's perspective? Now, this plan was made well before the election dates were announced, but it just so happens that it's on the day that the first phase of polling is happening. The Matua votes are crucial in the phases to come, and it's very powerful political symbolism from the BJP's perspective.
I don't know if you want to make me say what perhaps you want to say yourself, but if you think these are glorious coincidences, I don't. And I really think this is a blatant misuse of position of power, but I don't want to comment so much on that because I think Bangladesh is celebrating, a very big day today, thanks to our former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. So let's just stop there. But I want to just make a very small point, Rahul. You're talking about West Bengal. Why does the BJP sound and look so confused? Is this deliberate? Obviously it is. They will, approve CAA in the first cabinet meeting in Bengal, but keep mum on it in Tamil Nadu. Keep absolutely silent on it and shirk away the question in Assam. The same BJP who doesn't know who Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar was, they actually went and defaced his statue there, who went and garlanded a wrong Birsa Munda, who does not want to talk about, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee in Bengal. Why don't you want to talk about that? You've been in government for 7 years. You claim that he died under dubious circumstances. Why are you not launching a probe into it? Is that not Bengali Asmita? You don't think people or the Bangla Bhashis would want to know about that? Because these are opportunistic stands that the BJP takes, whether it is the CAA or whether it's anything else. During the Corona time, 3 ordinances could be passed on farm laws, but the rules could not be framed for CAA. I mean, how opportunistic is this?
Okay,
and you really
let Nupur Sharma respond to that. That in Assam, your manifesto is silent on the CAA. In West Bengal, you say it will be implemented in the first cabinet meeting. When the party president is asked about it, he kind of dodges the question, doesn't give a straight answer on CAA in Assam. In Tamil Nadu, your own alliance partner, the AIADMK, has come out openly against the Citizenship Amendment Act. And the delay in just implementing the rules seems rather inexplicable and not fully explained.
Well, Rahul, first and foremost, I would really like the Congress party to clarify its position regarding CAA. Because I very clearly remember their own Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, saying it on the floor of the parliament, how it's a necessity in this country. Now, all of a sudden, they've done a U-turn, so much so, Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, right before the unfortunate riots in Delhi, went on to say, Arya Par ki ladai hai. I clearly remember. And after the riots ensued, wherein even Congress people, Congress office bearers are behind bars today, Rahul Gandhi decided to go into the homes of people belonging only to one religious section. And that's actually a recorded fact. Now, interestingly, I would also like Mrs. Srinath to clarify her position vis-a-vis Netaji. We all know how much humiliation that man had to go through within the ranks of the Congress party. Let's not forget that. Please get your own house in order. Really? Let's not even forget HPMG was a minister in your own ranks. Now, I want to, of course, I know it a bit better than you. We all remember what you did to him. You could not stand him previously.
No,
I think you need to read up about that. Now, I want
get a crash course in history.
You don't think so because you've not read so. Now, let's also now go back to, Madam, today you just right now said, what about, BJP and TMC is all about violence. Did you not read the papers today? And I'll read the headline to you. 1 killed, 15 hurt as TMC clash. Did you read it? Do you know how many of your own workers are involved in these violence and rioting issues within the state of West Bengal? Or are you not concerned about your cadre losing life? And this is the newspaper. I'll show it to you, right?
You know what happened in Tripura? You want to start talking about this?
Secondly,
what are you talking about?
You want me to start talking about Bikram Singh Brahma?
Answer your stand on CAA, madam.
On national television. I've already answered.
Answer your CAA stand. Are you for CAA? Are you against CAA? I've asked you a very pointed question. Are you for or against CAA? Answer that question. Manmohan Singh was speaking on NPR that you want to misuse.
Okay, no, 1 second. I can't, no, 1 second. Time out. No, this debate, if it degenerates in this fashion, just goes to the level of a banana republic, and that's the last thing I want, because then you're just speaking over each other. You make no sense. You're just having a conversation which doesn't benefit our viewers, and I don't like that. You've spoken at length. I will come back to you for more. Supriya and Nupur, one at a time, please, not at the same time. Riju Datta, respond to the point that Nilanjan Sarkar makes, that all the reportage that's coming, all the analysis that's coming just speaks of, anti-incumbency, corruption, tolabazi, nepotism. It's just that the odds are stacked against the Trinamool. On the other side, you've got a new entrant making huge inroads in a very short span of time that's raring to bring the Trinamool down. The Prime Minister says this is Ashal Paribartan, and all the data points seem to suggest a very, very tight-fought election, which shows how difficult the ask is for the Trinamool.
Rahul, to a certain extent, I do agree. When a party is in power for 10 years, there is some sort of anti-incumbency. But these corruption charges, these tolabaji charges, they're just a negative narrative that BJP has been campaigning from day one. They have entered Bengal. Because see, if we go on those lines, then all the state machinery that has been sold to a few crony capitalists, how much tolabaji has come from there? When the PM talks about Vikas, then yes, the country has seen Vikas, but the petrol is at 100, gas is at 950, and all essential commodities at an all-time high. When he talks about that we will give jobs, and all the manifestos, if you see throughout the states, they have promised jobs. Whereas 7 years in center, this country is at a 45-year-old high for unemployment. And when he talks about these minority communities, like I will not talk ill about my Prime Minister on foreign shows, but the timing, the appeasement of a particular community, ye janta hai, ye sab janti hai ki kya natak chal raha hai. And the bottom line is, they couldn't even form the rules of CA. The ideology of BJP in Bengal has become lie, and lie some more. And their chunavi jumlas are falling flat because people are seeing right through it. And the bottom line is that election is fought between 10 years of development, 10 years of work, 10 years of social welfare schemes, which has touched the lives of people of Bengal by Mamata Banerjee, versus 7 years of nothing but jumlas and fake promises.
Okay, so I want to show our viewers this report that we put together on all the animation videos that have been viraling across West Bengal, and the digital media teams of all political parties working overtime to try and be trendy, try and be hip, try and be cool, and try and put out their message in a form that the young generation will understand.
It is the wild, wild West Bengal, and here the fight is between the outsiders and the locals. This new video from the TMC is only the latest in the series that pitches Mamata Banerjee as Fighter Didi. The battle for Bengal has turned into a full-blown digital war. The TMC, taking its Khela Hobe pitch a notch higher, is projecting Didi as the savior against all evil. In this case, the BJP. While on Khela Hobe, the viral song has now become an anthem of sorts.
Ashol parivartan, ashol parivartan, ashol parivartan, ashol parivartan.
And if you thought that it was just the TMC that's letting its creative campaign juices flow, the BJP isn't too far behind.
Banglai shudhu danga baji o pishi jao 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 rasta behal banglai akan pishi jao jao jao.
The party came up with Pishi Jao, inspired by the famous 19th century Italian anti-fascist song Bella Ciao.
Jao jao nirab keno pishi re sharkar o pishi jao 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 pishi jao. আজকে যিনি জোড়া ফুলে কালকে পদ্ম ফুলে রাজনীতিতে নীতিটাই গেছে সবাই ভুলে
ঠিক ঠিক
The Congress too has thrown its hat in the ring, taunting the defections and inductions in both the TMC and BJP with this video based on the traditional Bengali Ganer Ladai.
বাংলায় আমার ভাষার গর্ব আমার পরিচিতি কংগ্রেস দিল স্বাধীনতা পরাধীনতার ইতি বিধান রায়ের বিধাননগর কিংবা দুর্গাপুর কংগ্রেসেরই হাতে গড়া আইআইটি খড়গপুর
The CPM too has jumped onto the parody wave. It has come up with a song that attacks both the BJP and TMC, saying that they are two sides of the same coin. The crossfire of slogans, jingles and videos has surely brought new color to campaigning in battleground Bengal. Bureau Report, India Today.
So we've spoken a lot about West Bengal. I want to now focus just for a moment on Assam. Going back to the India Today Election Intelligence Dashboard, I'll take you through what's happening in the state of Assam in Phase 1. In Phase 1, the elections are in the 47 seats of Upper Assam, and in these areas, in the last elections, the Congress had 11, and I'm adding the AUDF, the BJP and its alliance partners at 35, with 45% of the vote share. Now, the interesting thing from the Congress's perspective is that they have a formidable alliance, BPF, Congress and the AUDF together. On the other side, you've got the BJP and the AGP. Kaushik Deka joins us. He's travelled Assam, he comes from Assam and understands the state of Assam better than anybody else in our newsroom, and dare I say, people who are tracking politics at this time. Kaushik, give our viewers a sense of what you think the key factors are in the first phase of polling in Upper Assam, and at this moment, what's your sense of the state of play?
Yeah, Rahul, this first phase, there are 47 seats, as you have mentioned, and the key factors, if you have to see, will be two factors. One is the Citizenship Amendment Act 2019, which was passed in December 2019, and the tea garden issue, because the 47 seats, these are centered around Upper Assam, North Bank of Brahmaputra, and some in the middle of Assam. And when you see the middle of Assam seats, those have mostly Muslim, these would be Muslim-dominated areas. So the voting pattern would be slightly different, and it will definitely favor Congress and AUDF. But the numbers are very less. The Muslim-dominated seats in middle of Assam. But the majority of the seats are 26 seats are dominated by Assamese-speaking people. And in these places, obviously, Citizenship Amendment Act will play a role. But even if we say it will play a role and people are angry with BJP, those who would be angry with BJP, they would not probably vote for, they would not definitely vote for Congress, in a sense that because Congress has tied up with AUDF, and it dilutes the benefit they probably would have got because of this Citizenship Amendment Act. Now, when that happens, the primary gainer would be BJP, for the simple reason that people who would have voted against BJP, they would go to the new parties, the new regional parties, and that's where the impact of CA would be diluted. And moreover, because of the COVID, the momentum that CA had got, the Citizenship Amendment Act had got, it has been diluted. Now about the tea garden factors. The Congress, obviously, they have a good manifesto. They have promised 5 guarantees. And one is raising the daily wages to rupees 365. Now, definitely that's a lucrative promise. But the legacy of Congress will impact them. Because as you have seen in the past, the Congress didn't do much about the tea gardens. And because of that, though they depended on the tea garden votes, but they didn't do much about the tea gardens. And because of that, the tea garden area shifted to BJP. And BJP tightened its grip through these interventions, through this direct benefit, the transfer of benefits and all those welfare schemes. They have tightened the grip, and because of that, it will be very difficult for Congress even to target BJP in the tea garden.
Now, here's the problem from the Congress's perspective, Suprashnath, that for the longest time, when the BJP came to power, the Congress did very little. Just ahead of the elections, when polls started saying that, okay, it's not such an easy cakewalk for the BJP, that because of the AIUDF, the BPF and the Congress being together, you're in with a chance. Then we see the Congress mount a rearguard action. It's a bit like what happened in Gujarat, where for the longest time, after Prime Minister Modi came to Delhi, the Congress was in hibernation. Just before the elections, they wake up, they think they have a chance and then try and go all out. You know, this is once again a classic case of how the Congress, when for the first 3 years they should have been active, was completely in disarray in Assam. And which is why, even though you have an opportunity, you haven't been able to capitalize on it, whereas the BJP takes the smallest opportunity and just uses it to throw the door open.
You wait and watch the results and they'll tell you a very different story. I can agree to completely discount and disagree with your being complacent, quote-unquote, theory. As far as Assam is concerned, Rahul, and I say this with some amount of authenticity because I've been in Assam for a very long time during these elections. And I can tell you that the kinds of promises that the BJP made, the moon that they promised, 25 lakh jobs, only 80,000 created, less than 3%. We are going to these elections with 5 very clear promises. And the truth is that the tea garden is a big issue. The workers there have a pitiable situation that they live in. They were living on 167 rupees wages. The BJP had promised them the moon. They did not deliver. It was only after Rahul Gandhi went and promised 365 when we are elected to power, they increased those wages by merely 50 rupees. So today the wages are only 217. We are offering not the moon, very pragmatic approach. Our 5 guarantees are 5 lakh government jobs. We are offering 365 rupees to tea garden workers. We are offering 2,000 rupees for homemakers, 200 units of free electricity. And of course, our stand on CA is absolutely clear. We are not dubious about it. We are not looking the other way. We are saying we are vehemently opposed to this and we will ensure it is not going to be implemented. That's
would you acknowledge that the Congress, Badruddin Ajmal and the BPF, the Bodoland People's Front coming together, makes Assam, just by the caste arithmetic, the alliance arithmetic, a far trickier fight than when you won last time, when the opposition to you was divided?
Well, the last statement of Mr. Badruddin Ajmal made even the president of Assam Congress running for cover and completely distance itself from Mr. Ajmal's statement regarding mosques would be shut down and you will not be allowed to wear burqas, you will not be allowed to wear the cap, you will not be allowed to pray and blah, blah, blah. So perhaps they need to put their own house in order, and she's absolutely wrong. When they left power, it was 137. Our Chief Minister, Mr. Sonowal, increased it to 167, and thereon, after that, also increased it further. It so happened that the garden owners went to the High Court and got a stay order. For that matter, we all know, the whole country knows the falsity of your promises from Garibi Hatao to Nyay, without actually explaining how are you going to bring about anything. If you had done anything in the 1970s vis-a-vis Garibi Hatao,
I can give you the numbers if you dare to argue with me on numbers.
Now, I interestingly also want to...
I can give you the numbers.
Because you are faltering on numbers,
if you
madam.
Understand
this
and
very government has also given these tea. That's why you sound very, I'm sorry, like an ignorant. I'm sorry to use this word for you. It so happens that this very government has given 8,000 rupees into the accounts of these tea growers. What did you do for them? And those 35 seats where this is likely to have an impact, they are agreeing. Yes, Mr. Sonowal's government has done the maximum for us, but we also need electricity. We also need roads, we also need toilets, we also need houses, we also need water connections, and we need everything like the development that the BJP promised and also delivered on. What did you do? Since you want to talk about numbers, please answer that.
Okay, Nilanjan, I want your sense
first. So when are Mr. Sonowal and Mr. Hemant Biswa Sarma willing to smoke the peace pipe? I want to know this. What's happening between Mr. Hemant Biswa Sarma and Mr. Sonowal? If you just answer that question, we'll know what you're doing in Assam. So let's not get there. But it's okay. You can keep making personal accusations. You can keep calling me ignorant. That's how you train. I have no issues with that.
This makes no sense. I will not allow the debate to degenerate. That's not okay. Nilanjan Sarkar, what's your analysis about the state of play in Assam as we go into this first phase of polling in Upper Assam, given the kind of agitations the state saw on the back of CAA coming in? Do you think that's still a key issue, or do you think since then tempers have kind of calmed down on this issue?
I mean, tempers have definitely calmed down because, electoral politics is complicated, right? But, let's even look at the 2019 elections. We see fairly close vote shares. And I think we should be honest that, with the Congress party and its new alliances, purely on the numbers, it is a formidable alliance, right? And the BJP, like what you mentioned, Bengal, has a lot going for it in terms of its access to state resources, state power. But Assam is a very different state than many other states in India. Lots of different communities, lots of patronage politics, lots of reserve land politics, lots of tea garden politics, right? And so, unlike some of these other states where it's easier to craft a narrative against this patchwork kind of coalition, it's much harder in Assam. And that's why, maybe a year or two ago, people thought Assam would be no contest. But as we've come closer to the election and we look at the alliance the Congress has put together, purely on the numbers and purely on the way that Assam works, it definitely looks like a close election.
Rajat Sethi, you fought and you've helped parties fight elections in the Northeast. This point that Supriya raises, this very mixed energy between Sarbanda Sonowal and Himanta Biswa Sarma, because on the one side you've got Himanta very clearly making known to anyone who cares to listen that he hopes to be Chief Minister, and you've got both Amit Shah, the Prime Minister, having to acknowledge that privately, at least, even if not publicly, that he is a formidable player. And you've got Sarbanda Sonowal, who's going in as Chief Minister, hasn't been announced as Chief Minister for the next elections, but has to look over his shoulder to see HBS standing there. Does that make things trickier in Assam for the BJP, Rajat?
Contrary to, what the perception is generally made out in media, and media loves gossips, I can tell you, and I personally have experienced this, there is a phenomenal working equation between the two leaders. Anybody who operates in Assam, works in that region would know that. They have a bonhomie. There is always competition, and this should actually be taught as a healthy example of how political competition should be. People are playing it out. Both the camps, Himanta is working exceptionally hard. Even Sarbada is working very hard. Both of them, mind you, Sarbada came all the way for Himantoda's nomination. And why can't we have healthy competition in a party? What is really sad is what Congress points out. Because Congress, there is no competition. You pretty much are ordained. If you belong to the blue blood, you are going to be at the helm forever. Whosoever is the challenger is going to be pushed out of the party. That is how Trinamool was created. That is how Himantoda had to leave Congress party. So, Congress doesn't have the locus standi to speak on this issue. And I feel that this is a very small issue. Whatever you are seeing a groundswell for Congress is just an arithmetic groundswell. Why I'm saying this is because of the alliance between AIUDF and Congress, which till the time Tarun Gogoiji was alive, he never allowed even to touch AIUDF by any distance. He made it a point that AIUDF is a direct threat to Assamese culture, a direct and an existential threat to the Assamese-speaking people. He made it so clear, amply clear, and he went out of the way to stop the Congress High Command to make an alliance with the AIUDF.
But when Tarun Gogoi was calling the shots, at that time the BJP wasn't as formidable a factor. And of course, you had the presence of Tarun Gogoi in the electoral...
till 2016, sure. Rahul.
I know, but I'm saying he wasn't as...
BJP was a challenger, was a very strong challenger.
But the Congress was sitting in government, but you're right.
For that matter. Even in 2019, Tarun Gogoiji was still alive. He still ensured AIUDF is not partnering with
Okay, Kaushik, 30 seconds, final words, Kaushik. Kaushik Dekar.
I embrace AIUDF. But yes, the thing is that in Congress has put up a fight, and we must not forget last time also Congress vote share was higher than BJP's. Congress got 30%, BJP got 29%.
I'm sorry, going to
no, that's a contested vote share. No, Kaushik, that's a contested vote share.
I know, because
you need to understand what a contested vote share is.
Doesn't have the boot workers.
Can I just come in?
Okay, so I'm out of time. The Bengal elections we'll keep tracking very, very closely. This is an exciting election. plays out over many phases. So we'll be here till the 2nd of May, tracking every in and out for you. Slipping into a break, more on the other side. Stay with us.